Hello again. Time for another Unusual Suspect reaction. This is the latest video put out by Ross John Fearnley, and it's called 10 Things I'd Have Changed in the Star Wars Sequels. And I'm really interested to see what he has to say here, because the Star Wars sequel trilogy is a pretty dividing trilogy. A lot of people either love, hate, or are very mixed, and if I remember right, I don't remember exactly what he said about Force Awakens, but I remember he really did not care for The Last Jedi, and I think even though he thought it was a mess, I think he said it initially on social media that he thought Rise of Skywalker had some fun parts. Like, I think he might have enjoyed it. And before I jump into this, just my brief thoughts on the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I thought Force Awakens, while not perfect, I don't think it was a great film, but it was a fun, nostalgic trip, and definitely open potential for a good trilogy. And Last Jedi just went in a completely different direction, and while I do think it has a lot of problems, like really big fucking problems, The Last Jedi, I do give it props for having the most original storyline that Star Wars has had in years, and there were some good parts. And The Rise of Skywalker, you want my full thoughts? Check out my vlog review I did over on my other YouTube channel, because I really go into depth on why I fucking hate that movie, and honestly, I'd rather watch the prequels again than go through Rise of Skywalker a second time. And anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. Let's jump into the video.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Been a while, but get excited, because today I'm going to talk about Star Wars! More specifically, the sequels! Boring! Yeah, it's sad how predictable that response has become. I mean, this is Star Wars episodes 7 to 9 we're talking about, right?
Hair's getting long.
No one thought would happen. The trilogy that when announced, we all lost our collective shit over. A bona fide sequel trilogy to the greatest pop culture phenomenon of arguably all time, complete with original returning cast members and super talented directors on board. What could go wrong? Now, granted, many love these films. I mean, a sizable portion of the fan base considers Last Jedi the greatest entry in the series since Empire. I'm not one of those people, but to each their own. But the general consensus is that not only are the sequels worse than the original trilogy, they're worse than the prequels. And granted, the prequels have seen a bit of a
Rise of Skywalker. The others, I don't think they're that bad.
But still, for a trilogy to be labelled worse than the films that gave us Jar Jar Binks, stilted dialogue aplenty, and one of the worst on-screen romances in movie history, is really saying something. But what's interesting is that the sequels do effectively fix what people didn't like about the prequels. The acting is better, the dialogue is less wooden, there's a bigger emphasis on practical costumes and sets.
Yeah.
However, these films sound great, but where these films faltered, for me at least, I mean, how much time have you got?
I have all the time in the world.
The characters have wasted potential and don't behave like they should. The pacing of the story can feel slow and disjointed, and there's a million different plot threads that make no sense, and what ones that do are just straight up lifted from the original trilogy. These films are entertaining enough, and I enjoyed all three on first viewing, but analyze them even a little, and you'll find they're a complete mess. But for me, one of the most disappointing aspects of the films was how many times, when watching, I was like, oh man, if only they had done this, and they could have changed that tiny little thing, and we could have had this happen instead.
Agree.
The sequels had a fantastic setup. I just don't think they took full advantage of it. They set in motion so many interesting twists, so many intriguing ideas, but they more often than not retcon them to appease viewers. If only they had been a bit more daring, if only they had taken some more chances, these films could have rivaled the legendary status of the original trilogy. So what would I do? Say I was hired as a script supervisor on the Star Wars sequels. What would I have changed? What tweaks would I make to make these films click? Well, I have 10 ideas for you today, so sit back, relax as I count down 10 things that I'd have changed in the Star Wars sequels.
The floor is yours, Senator.
Where the fuck did the First Order come from? Okay, I realise this is likely explained in all the extended universe books and comics, but something
But these are the movies.
vital should have been addressed at some point in these movies. Chronologically speaking, the last time we were in the Star Wars universe was Return of the Jedi. The Empire has been destroyed, the galaxy celebrates, the heroes have saved the day. Cracking. But one measly episode later, and all of a sudden, another Empire has come forth with a weapon that puts even the combined power of both Death Stars to shame. Who are these guys? What are their goals? Are they remnants of the old Empire or a new force altogether? How were they funded? How did they build Starkiller Base? And who would even join such an organization? None of this is explained. Look, all you needed was a Fellowship of the Ring-esque intro to Force Awakens. Have someone like Leia recall the events of the past 30 years from her perspective. Maybe the First Order came about after the galaxy became increasingly more lawless after the Empire disbanded. And people were looking for, well, order again. This is actually explored a little in The Mandalorian.
The Empire improves every system it touches, judged by any metric. Safety, prosperity, trade, opportunity, peace.
It's something that would be fascinating to dive into, because the Empire are bad, they destroy planets after all. But there would be some worlds out there that thrived under them. Rich worlds that benefited from the Empire's willingness to enact law and order on anyone willing to rebel against their corrupt governments. So when a new Empire starts gaining traction in the galaxy, oh shit, sign us up. But no, First Order are simply portrayed as bad guys. And that's fine, but for an organization to show up out of the blue like it does, you need to establish what makes them so appealing to the literally millions of people that follow them. Just would have helped us understand the villain's motivations that much more. Number 9. Rey's double blade. Yeah, this was surely set up to happen, right? Rey uses a quarterstaff as her base weapon, so a double blade would suit her fighting style. There's the training sequence in Rise of Skywalker where she's having difficulty with Anakin's blade, so she breaks out a staff-like stick to finish off the droid. There's evil Rey who straight up uses a double blade. There's Ridley's stunt double, Chloe Bruce, who clearly excels in this fighting style. And hell, there's even concept art of Rey with a weapon. So why didn't she get one? I mean, Rey has 3 different duels against Kylo in these films. Yeah, 3 fights with the same opponent. So a double blade could have offered a nice way to spice up the choreography. Like, you know when Luke gives her Leia's old saber? I was like, oh my god, this is surely the double blade, right? Leia could have been a user of one, and her strong connection to Rey would make this a very sentimental weapon to her. Or maybe Rey could take Luke's and Leia's single-bladed sabers and forge them together in a cool montage sequence. That'd have been dope. I mean, what could have been?
Could have been interesting,
Goes
but...
like a yellow blade at the end of the film. We could have had a double-bladed yellow lightsaber. Hell yes, get some Bastila Shan vibes going on in here. But not only do we not get the double blade, we don't even see Rey use a yellow one. Oh, you wanted me to use this? Nah, I'm gonna stick to the one that was used to murder young ones. I feel at home with this one. Stupid.
Seems a little nitpicky.
Flashback to Luke's Jedi Academy. Yeah, when you do a 30-year time skip, a flashback or 2 would definitely help out. And for me, what seemed like a glaring occlusion conclusion in these movies was Luke's Jedi Temple. Like, what was it like? Who did Luke train? Did he get help? Did he teach the principles of the old Jedi Order? Or once he developed himself? Fill us in a bit, guys. I mean, help us understand what the dude lost. He's a broken man in episode 8, but we don't really get to see what he's broken about. Dude, it's just a burning building. Get over it. I mean, yeah, many young Jedi die here, but note how they never show them outside of barely visible silhouettes. I mean, Luke was literally responsible for the deaths of younglings. Like father, like son. They should have made it to a bigger deal. You could do some fancy de-aging work on
This is a bit of a mess.
Younger. Hell, you do this at one point, and then you can help us understand the relationship he had with his students, including Ben. Yeah, this flashback could work to Ben's benefit too, as we could see Luke training him, and maybe we could get a scene of him with his mummy and daddy. Yeah, it's easy to forget that Han and Leia are his parents, as all three are never on screen together. Ben and Leia don't share the screen once, and the only time we see Ben
never got the chance.
kills him. If only we could see the strong bonds the Solo family once had, it would make Ben's fall to the dark side all the more tragic, and it would help us empathize with him, which is bloody important to do, by the way, given his redeeming arc. You gotta get the audience back on his side. Would have helped to have his character arc that much more.
It would help to give us a reason to give a shit.
The return of Christensen and McGregor. Yeah, like many, I was a bit confused as to why Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't return. They're Force ghosts just like Yoda. So where the hell were they? I mean, just shoving these guys in here for the sake of it wouldn't be a wise move. But Anakin certainly has a good reason to show up. Given Kylo Ren's fascination with Vader, his grandfather, I think it would have been so cool to see Anakin speak to Ben when he turns back to the light. Have him share his story, have him give Ben some words of wisdom. There's actually one scene in Rise of Skywalker where this would have been perfect to incorporate. It's when Han comes back from the
Best scene of the movie.
Ah, a zombie! A real actual zombie!
Alright, okay, yeah, I guess this is a vision of sort of thing, but it doesn't make much sense given Han isn't Force sensitive. It's honestly more like Ben is going insane.
Stop his daddy.
I think we all do when we're in crisis.
It's too late.
Just keep moving, don't make eye contact.
So I think including Force Ghost Anakin here would have made much more sense, and would be far more interesting. In fact, there is an edit of this very concept online from a YouTuber called Mario e Luigi 64. So it's clear this is a fan favourite idea. As for Obi-Wan, well, he doesn't have as much of a connection to the new cast, so he wouldn't have as much of a role. But to see him alongside Yoda in that scene on Act 2 would have been amazing to see. Obi-Wan was as much a mentor to Luke as Yoda, so his inclusion here would have worked wonderfully. Shame we'll never see it.
So uncivilized.
Number 6. Luke lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on about the fast one Luke pulls on Kylo, where he transmits himself like a false hologram. I guess.
Like I said, Last Jedi has problems.
Yeah. Now, I legitimately was loving this scene until they killed him. I'm sorry, guys. This was a shit death for the Luke Skywalker. Because, first of all, if you had to have him sacrifice himself, then why not just have him fly there in his X-Wing and sacrifice himself in a more heroic manner? Have an awesome moment of him coming in hot in his X-Wing and have him single-handedly take down a few walkers like fucking Levi making his way through a row of Titans. If he could take down one 30 years ago, then imagine his power level now. This is
I'd be down for that.
brilliant. We wanted to see Luke as a badass Jedi master. 30 years ago, he bested the literal Chosen One. So 3 decades of training later, he should be a god. But all we see him do in these movies is put himself in 2 places at once. And that apparently is enough to kill him. Look, just have episode 8 be Luke's redeeming arc and have him kicking ass again in episode 9. I mean, Luke's last words were,
See you around, kid.
why have him say something like that just before he dies. Being dead kind of makes the act of seeing someone around kind of difficult, doesn't it? So how would I play this out? Well, I would have Luke save the day as he does, and I'd then have him go back to his hut, very much alive and well, and he'd pull out a box. Yoda then shows up again, and they look at each other and simply nod like they're in agreement. And out of the box, Luke pulls out his trusty blade saber, and he'd say something akin to Vin Diesel going, "One last rod. Hype us up, guys." Now, I do get why Johnson killed him off. I mean, imagine if Luke survived. We'd be like, oh, Kylo won't stand a chance against him in a duel. Where would the tension be? This is Rey's fight. If she had a badass Jedi Master on her side, then it'd be 2-on-1 and incredibly unexciting. And I agree. So to fix this issue, stick around for my number 1 pick, as it'll certainly give Luke a big reason to stick around.
Would have made more sense to change Luke's fate considering Carrie Fisher died.
More bloody Death Stars.
Yeah.
I could not
Yep.
believe
Yep.
it when I heard this in episode 9.
The Emperor sent a ship from Mexico. Does that mean every ship in the fleet
Has planet-killing weapons? Of course they do.
Of course they do! Holy shit! 4! They're up to 4 fucking different Death Stars! 4 Death Stars! I can feel your anger. Look, I realise you wanted to give the bad guys a big new threat of a weapon and you wanted to up the stakes, but giving them over 1,000 Star Destroyers, all with planet-destroying capabilities? It's a bit much, don't you think?
How are they losing?
Effort Luke went through to destroy the Death Star, and someone told him over the radio, well, 1 down, 1,079 to go. No! So what should have been done? What would be a big new threat that's intimidating, but not completely ridiculous? Something that the First Order could do untold damage with, but wouldn't be yet another planet-killing battle station. Well, what about the Starforge? This was seen most prominently in the Knights of the Old Republic video game. It's a giant Death Star-esque station, but it doesn't destroy planets. It instead uses the power of a nearby star, something the First Order has experience with, along with the power of the Force, to create massive armadas of ships. This could still be intimidating as hell for the heroes, and it would have the added benefit of explaining where the hell all these Star Destroyers came from. Have Exegol be home to the remnants of the Starforge we see in Knights of the Old Republic. Have Palpatine discover it, and then have him spend the 30 years from Return of the Jedi.
I wouldn't have brought Palpatine back at all.
Of this massive army. But don't make them bloody Death Stars. The fact that there's over 1,000 of these things is intimidating enough. Jeez. Number 4. Do something with Phasma.
People hate how they handle
When I heard
her.
she was going to be in these films, I was stoked. She was amazing in Game of Thrones, and to see her cross over into Star Wars as a villain nonetheless, I was so on board with that. Pity she's given nothing to do. I just don't get it. You surely cast someone like Christie to be an intimidating presence, right? And she sure as hell looked it in that metallic stormtrooper getup, but she's just constantly humiliated, and for some reason is often the butt of jokes.
What do we do with her? Is her a garbage chute? Trash compactor?
Yeah, there is. It's clear her storylines with Finn in that he betrays her to join the Resistance, and then they have that duel in episode 8. So just go a little more in depth with that. Like that random trooper that Finn finds on Takodana. Traitor! What was up with that? I was supposed to know this guy? Why not have this trooper be Phasma? Have her kick Finn's ass to establish the big threat she should have been, and have her escape with Kylo after Han saves the day. And by the time their duel arrives in Last Jedi, the stakes would be that much higher. And in that duel in episode 8, have Phasma beat Finn even then. She is stronger and a far better warrior after all, but have Finn get the upper hand by turning her fellow troopers on her, by revealing that she was was the one who turned down the shields on Starkiller base, and by getting an opening, Finn is able to take her out. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, it's not as though they filmed that very scene and cut it out for the movie or anything. Smash cut!
When I put a gun to your head, you shut down Starkiller shields. Now what would your troops do if they found out?
You ever get the feeling like they're trying to piss us off?
A little bit.
Number 3. Palpatine's master plan. So, Rey's parentage is a big mystery in these films. It's definitely what everyone was theorizing the most. Is she Luke's daughter? Han and Leia's? Obi-Wan's? Is she a Binks? Well, no. As it turns out,
Oh, God.
They're filthy junk traders. Sold you off for drinking money.
and when I heard this, I was like, oh, okay, I can get behind that.
Me
I like
too.
what Ryan Johnson is doing here. He's saying that your lineage is unimportant and that you can forge your own destiny regardless of your genes.
I was down for that.
But then J.J. Abrams came back for episode 9 and he was like, nah.
You are a Palpatine.
Yep, good old Palpatine had a granddaughter, which means he had kids, which means,
When the fuck did this happen?
oh no. Yes. No, it means I got. Please see. Please no. Hey ladies, what do you say we do it? So, yeah, it's an odd explanation, but I honestly don't have too much of an issue with it. I'd have just changed one little detail. Have Rey not be Palpatine's granddaughter, have her be his literal creation. This idea goes back to episode 3, with Palpatine's infamous story about Death plagues the wise.
He could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life.
And later on in the film, he states that he intends to uncover how to do this with the help of Vader.
Achieve death. The power only one has achieved. But if we work together, I know we can discover the secret.
So, what came of that? Now, it could be argued that Palpatine is bullshit in here and this power to create life never existed. But I like to think he was telling the truth. Because this power would explain one of the biggest mysteries there is in all of Star Wars. Yeah, I'm talking about Shmi's whole immaculate conception thing.
There was no father. I carried him. I gave birth.
Well, if you choose to see the prequels as
Yeah,
canon.
this has never been explained. Just how was Anakin born? Was it really just the will of the Force or some shit? Or maybe Anakin was the product of the one being who could create life, i.e. Darth Plagueis. That's my theory. Plagueis was the one who created Anakin, and his apprentice, who is Palpatine by the way, caught wind of that. Ooh, my hell for this black bastard created this boy. I have so got to get him as my apprentice. And this is what he does. But at the end of the day, Vader was not Palpatine's creation. Deep down, Sheev wanted more. He wanted an apprentice that he himself made. That's what he desired. Someone he could pass the mantle on to. Someone who could carry on his bloodline. If only he could uncover the secrets his master held. So, after 10 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, and after literally decades of trial and error, he does it. He creates Rey. And because of this very similar origin to Anakin, it explains Rey's incredible natural abilities. How did you do
I
that?
don't know. I've run streets, but I've never left the planet.
She would literally be a
Banter.
child of the Force, and her midichlorian count, if you want to go there, would
I really
be
don't.
Anakin's. Also, side note, Palpatine's return would have to be explained a lot better. You see, the whole
Yeah.
cloning angle actually works for me. I mean, if Django could do it, why not Palpatine? A clone would be a good backup plan for Sheev.
Well, they never mentioned it, so he just came back somehow.
And I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about this, because it might be unpopular, but here we go. How did the Palpatine that we see in the sequels be the OG Palpatine, the real deal. Now, I know what you're thinking. How would that be possible? We saw Palpatine die in Return of the Jedi. Unless the Palpatine we saw in Episode 6 was the clone all along. Your move, Shyamalan. I mean, think about it. Why would Palpatine be on the second Death Star in person? It was still being constructed and less vulnerable to attack. Seems kind of a dangerous place to be, right? I mean, even the Empire higher-ups are seemingly confused by him being there.
The Emperor's coming here.
So Canny Sheev sends a clone to act in his place. I mean, this might undermine Episode 6's ending a bit, but considering
Yeah.
watching this movie, you can be like, okay, you're gonna die, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. In fact, your son is gonna kill you in cold blood. And none of you save the galaxy because Palpatine is still alive and a new empire is going to wreak havoc on the galaxy in due course and cause the deaths of billions. Sorry to be a pie pooper and continue. Yeah, Episode 6's ending has been fucked by these new movies.
Yes.
Might as well fuck
Yes.
some more. Anyway, if the film took the time to explain Palpatine's master plan more, it would tie the whole saga together and would make the sequels feel truly part of the overarching story. And we would be spared the image of Sidious. We would be spared that image. And wouldn't that alone be worth it? Hey,
I'm just more confused by when did this happen?
Backside. Number 2. Cut the whole Resistance escaping plotline. Yeah, I'm on about the entire B-plot of Last Jedi. While Rey is on Act 2 training with Luke, you know, the interesting part of the movie, we have to keep cutting back to this slow-ass chase scene with the First Order following the Resistance, who can't escape because they're low on fuel and being tracked through light speed, and the First Order can't attack because... Man, it's another $1 million question.
What is the point of all this if we can't blow up 3 tiny cruisers?
Hey, Hux is pointing out the plot holes.
Well, they're faster and lighter, sir. They can't lose us, but they can keep at a range where our cannons are ineffective against their shields.
Then just send out fighters, or light speed another ship in front of them, or use a tractor beam. God, there's a million things you could do. But no, the First Order are stupid, so we have to watch this drawn-out feud between Poe and Holdo, which could have been over in a second.
Yeah.
I just told him
This
that.
got on my
And then there's
nerves.
this other drawn-out subplot with Finn and Rose, where they get captured and thrown in prison. all
Anything with
because they
Rose was
illegally parked
pointless.
their ship.
Can't park that shot here. They just lit off toward the casino.
Can you imagine if Han got caught and frozen in carbonite, all cause he double parked the Falcon? This whole section of the movie just screeches Last Jedi to a halt. Honestly, I'd make The Last Jedi mostly just about Rey and Kylo. Like 80% of the movie would just focus on them. This whole chase scene is a far less exciting version of similar events from Empire. So drop it. Have the intro scene still so you can start off with a fun action scene, and then have the Resistance escape to Crates right away, because this would be home to a backup Resistance base. And then Poe, Finn and Leia can spend the movie trying to rebuild the Resistance. And maybe you can throw an action scene in there when a planet they ask for help from betrays them to the First Order, and that could lead to a final showdown on Crates. I think this would streamline the movie so much and would help deal with that 2.5-hour runtime, which does indeed drag. Okay, before I get to my number 1 pick, I wanted to share with you some honorable mentions, because when I was writing the script for this video, it was initially a lot longer.
I wouldn't have minded.
Backup. Yeah, the fact that Lando was able to muster up a force of over 14,000 ships in the small time he had was nothing short of ridiculous. I would have it so that Lando sets off for help far earlier in the film, and cause Luke would still be alive in my script, he would add extra clout to his cause. If a literal Jedi, if the man who defeated Vader and Palpatine came back to give the galaxy hope through a rousing speech transmitted from Coruscant, then maybe this scene wouldn't have our IQs. Finn as a Jedi. Yeah, Finn establishes himself as Force sensitive, so having him grow into a Jedi himself would have made perfect sense. Plus, it would have helped his character out in the later movies, as it would give him more of a reason to be there. And in my number one pick, I've got a great use for him in mind. Darth Pride. So Captain Pride was a bit of a highlight in the last film. Richard E. Grant had a presence about him that made him feel like an old school Star Wars villain. Kind of similar
I didn't even remember his name, to be honest.
I see more done with him, and I feel writing him in as a Sith or Inquisitor could have been a really cool inclusion. As an additional saber user, could have helped shake up the fights a little. Cut out the Knights of Ren. Holy shit. What was the point of these guys? Ever since they showed
I honestly forgot about them.
Episode 7, we were all desperately theorizing who they could be and what threat they would pose to our heroes. But literally all they do in the films is just act as an obstacle for Ben to get through. They don't talk, they don't seem especially strong, so either just replace them with regular stormtroopers, or you could use my Darth Pride idea and have Ben face off against him in the finale instead. Okay, so there are my honourable mentions. Let's get around to my number one pick.
Okay, what is it?
And the number one thing that I'd change in the Star Wars sequels is the fall of Rey. Okay, so this final point is going to take a bit longer to get through, but there's a reason for that. Because I would argue that this is in regard to the biggest retcon in the sequels. And I'm not really referring to Episode 9, as that is regarded as a massive step back of what Episode 8 established.
You come from nothing. You're nothing.
Several months later.
You are Palpatine.
But if you ask me, Episode 8 retconned itself before it even ended. You see, the whole movie, we get to see an ever-evolving relationship between Rey and Kylo. The scenes they have together are quite fascinating. Helped by Ridley's and Driver's performances, and I would call them out as one of the sequel's major highlights. So when Kylo betrays Snoke to save Rey, I was of course expecting the two of them to join forces. After all, Rey had a choice between this guy.
You come from nothing. You're nothing. But not to me.
Or this guy. And she chooses the latter. Look, Last Jedi was in desperate need of a hook. Something to rival the end of Episode 5. Not necessarily a plot twist, but something monumental had to happen that would have us dying to see Episode 9. And that monumental turn of events should have been Rey joining Kylo and turning to the dark side. We're doomed. But in order for this plotline to work, Rey would have to have many scenes of her giving into the dark. Remember, it's a seductive power. It consumes you. And there are moments of this you can sort of see in her duel with Kylo in The Force Awakens, but I think it's more implied here that she uses light side powers to beat him. Like in this bit where she closes her eyes and becomes all zen and shit. I don't know. Wouldn't it have made much more sense if Rey had won this duel specifically using the dark side? Remember, Rey at this point is wildly inexperienced.
And yet she can do all this fantastic shit.
Chance, unless she took some kind of a shortcut. Is the dark side stronger?
Yeah. But easier, more seductive.
Yeah, easier and more seductive. Ergo, it would have been far more accessible to her as a beginner Force user, whose anger was off the charts, by the way, given Han's death. So it would have given her that unnatural boost she needed to beat Kylo. But at what cost? The Force Awakens in my book would end with Rey saving the day as she does, but we would find out that she begins to crave what the dark side gave her. That power, that high, that the Sith love to go on about.
The dark side is strong in this place. I can feel its power.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
And throughout Last Jedi, Kylo would convince Rey to give in to this power, and by the time we reached the throne room scene, she would embrace the darkness, and Kylo and Rey would become the new leaders of the First Order, as master and apprentice.
Almost true there are.
Possibly lovers.
But we would need that defining moment that pushes her over the edge. In episode 3, it was Anakin killing Mace Windu. In episode 8, it would be Rey killing Chewie. Because in episode 9, this is what she does. Her anger summons force lightning and it causes Chewie's transport to explode.
I thought this was hands down the best scene in Rise of Skywalker.
My jaw was on the floor when I saw this. To have her anger...
I never thought Chewie died.
Lightning, and for that to cause the death of a loved one, that is dark as shit and I fucking love it. Pity they had to go and retcon it after just 2 minutes of screen time. What the fuck? So what I would do is have this moment in episode 8 instead,
And have her feel no remorse when she does it.
remember, dark side seductive power. It would be her first time using force lightning,
And she will like it. And more importantly, have Chewie really die.
I mean, look, I love Chewie, but without Han, he's not that interesting anymore. And by episode 9, his character has no reason to be there.
So, kill two birds with one stone.
Trim your massive character roster while having him act as the catalyst for Rey turning to the dark side.
Then I could picture the final shot of Last Jedi.
It would end with something very similar to this piece of concept art. Have the ominous music swell as it zooms in on Kylo on his throne with Rey by his side.
Then it cuts to a close-up of Rey with her eyes closed.
Cut to black. The credits then play in complete silence like what they do after a really fucking dark episode of Game of Thrones.
Holy fucking shit. It would be a somber, dark end. The Avengers Infinity War of the Star Wars universe, if you will. And it would hype us up so much more than the episode 8 we got did.
And in the subsequent episode 9, you could do lots of different things to adapt to a dark, Rey storyline. As I would want, Luke would be alive as he maybe takes on Finn as his new apprentice. Maybe Rey becomes too power hungry and she usurps the First Order throne and Ben has to go to the Resistance to help. You could have a scene of Ben coming back to his mother and there could be an emotional reunion.
Well,
akin to
that'd be
Zuko
hard to
and
do with
Pyro.
Fisher dead.
Maybe you could progress the story of Finn and Rey's romance, as Finn's love for her could be the key to bring her back to the light. You could also still bring back Palpatine, but don't reveal it in the trailer or the title crawl or in fucking Fortnite.
Yeah, that happened.
Have Palpatine's return take us by surprise in the climax as he reveals that Rey is his creation and that he's been feeding dark side energy into her. And maybe you could have this version of Sheev be younger and more virile if he was able to unlock the power to create life. It makes sense if you found out how to extend it as well. And because of this, we would get a cool lightsaber fight between Luke Skywalker and Palpatine at his full strength, while Finn and Ben take on Dark Rey.
Ooh, I could go on for hours, guys, but I think I'm going to stop there.
Long story short, Dark Rey could have opened up so many possibilities by episode 9.
And if there's one change I'd make to the Star Wars sequels, it's that one.
So there we go, 10 things I'd have loved to have seen done differently in these movies. Now again, I do think there's a lot of good in these films. From seeing Han and Chewie back to their old antics, to Holdo's light speech stride, to...
That was an awesome scene.
Act 2 to the interesting and evolving relationship between Rey and Kylo.
There's a lot of good stuff here.
So hopefully Disney remembers what worked in these films and pushes those aspects more for future Star Wars episodes.
What do you think? Do you reckon they'll do an episode 10?
Hopefully
I
not.
want to see that, and I mean like a sequel to episode 9, episode 10. I feel there's still more to Rey's story we haven't seen yet. Though Daisy Ridley has said that she doesn't plan to return to the franchise,
And given the often toxic fan base of these movies, I don't blame her.
so it looks like this is where this story ends, and despite my initial enjoyment of them, I can't help but feel disappointed. Well, on that other note, I'll see you guys next time. Sorry, you don't want to know where that came from. Oh, what the fuck?
Oh boy.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I just want to give some shout outs to my top tier supporters on Patreon. Thanks to Phoenix of Dust, Alex Dewar, Marshall Kaiju 98, General Kenobi, hello there, Andrew Lane, Duarte Bollet, Dr. Ted, Timothy J. Kilmer, Jacob Matthew Crawford, Joey, Thomas Wright, Mark Tonner, Gregorio Vasquez, Cow Queen, Scott Hazlitt, Lever 9999, Max Starr, Goldsboro TSG, Jake Burgess, Joshua Bowden, Saul Montague, Jack Downey, Christian Lishka, and Stefanis Suchaputra. All of you kick ass. Thank you so much. More videos in the works, guys, so stay tuned. Take care of yourselves.
Back at you, bro. That was a very interesting top 10 video. I don't agree with everything he said, but I understand his reasoning for a lot of what he said, and give him this. He is pretty creative, and not just with his editing, but those were some pretty well thought out story ideas. And the things I guess I agree with the most would be maybe more development or backstory for certain characters, like the Phasma character and Finn, or Luke's backstory. Overall, just more development with the characters and story, because with the exception of the old characters, all the new characters I found in the new trilogy were just wooden as fuck, and the ones that had personality were just unbelievably annoying, like Poe and Rose. And I get what he says about Kylo Ren, Ben, having maybe more scenes showing the bond between him and his mom and father. They might have been going that route, but with Carrie Fisher's death, there's not a lot they could have done, and I completely agree. I don't think Luke should have died at the end of episode 8, and considering, I mean, I know Carrie Fisher, Leia, lived in episode 8 to leave it open for episode 9, but with Carrie Fisher's death, I honestly think it would have been more beneficial if they went back, reshot some stuff, re-edited, have maybe Leia die in that scene where she's in outer space, spared us the Superman moment, and have Luke be the one who lives. I mean, it would have seemed abrupt, but it would have fit more and would have gave us more time with Luke. And just a personal opinion, I honestly think Lando should have had more scenes in Rise of Skywalker. I mean, you have Billy D. Williams, you should probably use him for more than just 10 lousy minutes. And the parts where he talked about giving Palpatine's more backstory, it was really creative. He really went into a lot of detail of how he thinks that could have worked, and I do think it's an interesting idea, but I'm of the opinion that they should not have included Palpatine in any way, shape, or form, aside maybe from his spirit connecting to one of the villains or Kylo Ren. I mean, I do think it's an interesting idea that the suspect came up with, but I don't know, just to find out Palpatine was alive, that he was back, just as he mentioned, it really undermined episode 6, and I completely agree with what he said. The new trilogy, particularly episode 9, pretty much puts a big downer on the heroic victorious ending of Return of the Jedi. The part about Palpatine being Rey's grandfather, when that happened, I was like, what? I mean, I know we had the twist of Vader being Luke's father, but there were hints to that happening, like with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's conversation about how he has his father in him. That's what they're afraid of. Sorry for that awkward edit. There was something I had to quickly take care of, but anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the Palpatine ideas. I think the ideas he had about Palpatine being a clone in Return of the Jedi, I honestly think it's a little bit of a convoluted stretch, but I do think, once again, he put a lot of thought in. It is interesting, but once again, I just think Palpatine, personally, should not have been included in these movies. It just really fell out of nowhere, and the final #1 thing he came up with was a really cool idea, and it would have been very different, but I honestly think I could have been down with the idea of Rey going to the dark side a little, and the scenes with her and Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi, I agree, they were the most interesting parts, and I was totally open to seeing where their relationship went, and whether it would be Master Apprentice or possibly romantic. And while some may have thought that was not a good idea, and I know a lot of people didn't like how it went in Rise of Skywalker, I did like their relationship, and the idea of Rey going dark, that could have worked. I'm not sure I would have been down with her killing Chewie. I mean, I am glad that Chewie, even though I didn't like the movie, I am glad Chewie didn't die in The Rise of Skywalker, but if he was to die, I think it would have been better if he maybe sacrificed himself, saving the other characters, because that seems like something Chewbacca would do, and maybe it could have worked, but I once again think the sacrifice angle would have had to have been a big part of it. I don't agree with everything the Unusual Suspect proposed in this video, but a lot of them were pretty good ideas, and even the ones I don't agree with, I still respect his creativity, and I think just overall, we all can agree, the sequels were just a blown opportunity. There were, as he said, good ideas, but they really didn't go anywhere, or they didn't amount to anything, and I think they can be blamed on the fact that there was no straight, clear outline for the whole trilogy. J.J. Abrams had some interesting ideas, but Rian Johnson went his own way. Colin Trevorrow, they just didn't like what he had to come up with, and he left. So they brought J.J. Abrams back, and I think we've established by this point, J.J. Abrams is not good at finishing franchises. So, just got a big clusterfuck of a trilogy, and I think overall, maybe I'm just repeating myself, but overall, I don't think the sequel trilogy had to exist. I know everyone will say, well, neither did the prequels, but I think that's the best way to put it. The original Star Wars trilogy was amazing. It was groundbreaking in terms of special effects and just cinema as a whole, and I think the original trilogy was perfect where it ended, and I remember thinking when it was announced that they were going to make the sequel trilogy, do we really need more Star Wars movies? Because I'm happy with where Return of the Jedi ended, but they made it, and like I do with the prequels, which I don't hate the prequels, I don't think they're good, but most of the time I choose not to look at the prequels as truly canon. Like, I just like to prefer the original trilogy as its own thing. And the prequels, I'll give them this. They are pretty fun in terms of the action, and as my cousin Matt has said, the sequel trilogies just have money. Like, they just come off like a big cash cow. And the prequels, give them this, there was passion behind them. Not good passion, but you can tell there was a bit more passion put into it. So yeah, don't agree with everything, but I like this. It was a pretty well put together video. Had a few laughs here and there, as the usual suspect always does, and as always, I loved hearing my name spoken at the end. Star Wars, I'm not sure what they're gonna do with it from this point on, but I think it's time we had a break in terms of the movies, and hope you enjoyed this reaction, and if you did, give it a like. If you want to see more, check out the other videos on the channel, and if you like those, maybe subscribe, and if by some miracle you're watching this and you're not already familiar with The Unusual Suspect, check out more of his videos. He has trailer mashups, movie reviews, just all types of content. He is truly a really gifted content creator, and I think this is a good one to sign off on. Hope you're all doing well, and I will see you again soon.